This was never a love story, it was a ritual of power. Elena is not simply a bride in this world, she is a human payment, transferred from a failed father to a violent empire. Victor believes he is securing obedience, but what he is actually creating is resistance. And when Adrian interrupts the ceremony, the moment is bigger than a rescue. It becomes a collision between possession and personhood, between inherited violence and the first terrifying act of freedom. In that aisle, Elena doesn't just run from a man, she breaks a system.
For most, a wedding aisle leads to union. For Elena Cross, it was the end of a transaction, her body the final payment. Her flesh was the currency, her freedom the collateral. The man at the altar, Victor Drazi, didn't want a wife. He wanted an acquisition. In the chill of a Chicago church surrounded by men with buried histories, a cold realization seized her. This was not a marriage. It was the transfer of an asset. But when a violent interruption desecrated the sanctuary, and a stranger offered an escape, she faced a choice with only two outcomes: annihilation or liberation. The consequences of her decision would ripple through the city's dark heart. Chicago's October wind cut like a razor, a feeling Elena Cross knew intimately through the fine lace of her wedding gown. The white dress, a symbol of innocence, was a cruel joke. She was property being traded. Her reflection in St. Augustine's anteroom mirror was that of a stranger who had seen countless true brides. She was not one of them. The gown fit perfectly, a detail her father had managed. He'd controlled every part of this except for her will. "Mija, you are stunning." Elena's jaw locked at his voice. Carlos Cross stood in the doorway, his fine suit a poor mask for the tremor that never left him since his debts and Victor Drazi came to call. "Don't use that name." Elena's voice was low and tight. "You lost that right when you used me to settle your accounts." Carlos flinched but held his ground. "It isn't what it seems." "It is exactly that." She turned, the fire in her eyes forcing him back a step. "You gambled everything. Our home, my mother's jewelry, your soul. When you had nothing left, you bet me." "Victor is a good man." "Victor's a butcher." The word hung between them, ugly and true. "He deals in guns, drugs, and fear. Half this city is terrified of him, the other half works for him. And you're serving me to him on a platter." Carlos's face darkened. "You don't understand these things." "I understand everything." Elena's voice turned to ice, a shield she raised to survive. "I understand you're a coward. I understand you'd sacrifice your daughter to escape your own weakness. And I understand that after today, I am fatherless." The word struck him like a blow. For a second, a desperate, fading part of her hoped he would break, plead, or offer some way out. She craved a sign of the man he once was, but Carlos Cross was too hollowed out for remorse. "The service begins in 15 minutes, he said, his voice empty. "Don't be late." He turned and walked away. Elena faced the mirror again, staring at the ghost in white. The hair wasn't hers. The makeup was applied by an artist on Victor's payroll. The dress cost more than 6 months of her salary from the photography studio he'd made her quit. "The wives of men like him do not work," he had explained. "They simply obey." Her phone buzzed against her thigh. A dangerous impulse, a self-inflicted wound she should have ignored. But her hand moved before her mind could stop it. The text was from Sarah, her best friend, the only one who had screamed at the insanity of this deal. "It's not too late. I have the car. I have cash. Just say the word." Elena's thumb hovered over the screen. It would be so easy. 3 letters, Y-E-S. Sarah would come. They would run. But escape was a fantasy. Victor Drazi didn't lose his possessions. Men like him had long memories and longer arms. If she ran, everyone would pay. Sarah would be hunted. Carlos would be broken. She deleted the text unanswered as the door opened again. Victor's sister, Celeste, stood there, a woman wearing couture as armor and a smile like a drawn knife. "It's time," she said, her eyes cataloging Elena like fresh meat. "Victor is waiting. He must be thrilled." Celeste's smile never faltered, but her eyes went cold. "A piece of advice. The faster you accept your new reality, the easier it will be. Victor is very generous with those who please him and very cruel to those who don't." "Is that what you tell yourself?" Elena held her gaze. "To live with the things he's done that put that look in your eyes?" For an instant, Celeste's mask cracked. A flicker of old raw pain showed through before being buried again under years of cold control. "You'll learn," Celeste whispered. "One way or another, you'll learn." She was gone, leaving Elena alone with the tolling of the church bells. Time was up. She walked down the hall, her body feeling like it belonged to someone else. At the end, Carlos waited to deliver her, to complete the sale. The thought was ugly and precise. "Elena," he started. "Don't." She took his arm out of necessity, her eyes fixed forward. "Just don't speak." The great doors of the sanctuary opened. St. Augustine's was filled with a silent congregation of men in dark suits with empty eyes. This was Victor's world. His soldiers, his family, his empire. Her father's debtors were likely among them, watching their investment with satisfaction. And there at the altar stood Victor Drazi. He was handsome in a predatory way, all sharp lines and coiled strength. At 42, he held a fortune built on Chicago's every sin. His tuxedo was tailored to perfection, a second skin. He smiled at her, but the smile never reached his eyes. His eyes were the most chilling thing about him. They were dark, cold, and assessing, the way a man might admire a new car while calculating its limits. Elena forced her body forward. Left foot, right foot. Don't think, don't feel, just walk. The wedding march played like a funeral dirge in her ears. Halfway there, she made the mistake of looking at him again. He winked. The casual, proprietary gesture shattered her fragile composure. This was happening. In minutes, the law would bind her to this man who would own her completely, and there would be no way out. She was 3 rows from the altar when the church doors imploded. It wasn't an explosion, but the sound of oak shattering against stone was a shock wave that ripped through the chapel. Every head spun around. A man was silhouetted against the gray afternoon light. Tall, powerful, his black suit built for function, not ceremony. He didn't run. He walked down the aisle with a terrifying calm that stole the air from Elena's lungs. The sanctuary erupted into chaos. Victor's men pulled guns from their jackets. Guests screamed and dove between the pews. The priest backed away from the altar, his hands in the air. The stranger never broke his stride. "Adrian." Victor's voice was a shard of glass in the noise. "You have a lot of nerve showing your face here." So they knew each other. A history. The man, Adrian, stopped right beside Elena. Up close, his face was hard, etched with the memory of violence. A thin scar cut through his left eyebrow. His eyes were nearly black, and when they met Elena's, she felt it like a physical touch. "Elena Cross," he said, his voice a low rumble far more threatening than any shout. "You have a choice." "She's not going anywhere with you," Victor snarled from the altar. "She's mine, paid in full." "A person can't be owned." Adrian's eyes never left Elena's. "No matter what deals were made, you are not property. You're a woman and you have a choice." Elena's heart hammered against her ribs. A circle of Victor's men now surrounded them, guns leveled, waiting for the word. This man was about to die for interrupting a wedding, and he was offering her a life. "Who are you?" she breathed. "I'm the man leaving this church," Adrian said, and held out his hand. "The only uncertainty now is if you come with me." "This is madness," Carlos seethed. "Elena, do not move." "Your opinion is now irrelevant," Adrian stated, his gaze sweeping over Carlos with pure contempt before locking again on Elena. "The choice is hers." "If you go with him," Victor's voice dropped to a lethal whisper, "I will hunt you. I will make you watch as I burn everything you love, and then you will beg to come back to me." Elena felt the truth in his vow. Victor Drossi never made idle threats, but trapped between the man who bought her and the stranger promising escape, one truth became clear. In either world, the life she knew was already gone. To wed Victor was to be erased, a slow smothering of every dream and piece of herself beneath the weight of his claim. To run with Adrian was to risk a clinical death, a bullet to the brain, a blade between the ribs. Between the two endings, only one let her die as herself. Elena's fingers found Adrian's. His grip was a warm, solid thing, and the connection sent a current through her that changed the world. A guttural sound tore from Victor, half command, half curse. The distinction vanished as the sanctuary erupted into chaos. But Adrian was already moving, pulling Elena into his shadow, his body a human shield as he started their retreat. Not for the main doors. That path was choked with enemies. He moved instead for the side altar toward a small door to the priest's chambers. The sharp crack of gunfire echoed. Elena registered the sound of splintering pews and stained glass exploding inward. A scream rose, impossible to place. A guest or one of Victor's men. Adrian kicked the side door from its frame and pushed her through. They plunged into a narrow, shadowed passage thick with the scent of incense and old wood. At the far end, another door promised the street. "Wait!" Elena gasped, breathless. The wedding dress was a trap, its lace and tulle a cage for her limbs. The heels made running a fantasy. "I can't!" Without a word, Adrian bent and ripped the lower half of her gown away in one violent tear. In the tight hallway, the sound of tearing silk was a gunshot of its own. Elena stood frozen, staring at him in disbelief, now wearing a ragged, knee-length ruin of her dress. "Better," he said, taking her hand again and pulling her onward. They burst onto a side street where a black SUV idled by the curb. Adrian wrenched the rear door open and all but threw Elena inside, diving in after her. "Go!" he yelled. The driver, a lean man with silver threading his dark hair, needed no other command. The vehicle shot from the curb just as Victor's men spilled from the church, weapons raised. Elena heard more shots and felt the SUV swerve violently, but they were already accelerating, slicing through Chicago traffic with an expert brutality that spoke of long practice. She was crushed against Adrian in the back seat, his arm a steel bar across her shoulders, his body still angled to block any round that might pierce the glass. Her heart hammered against her ribs, a frantic, trapped bird. Her hands shook so badly she had to ball them into fists. "What?" Her voice broke. She tried again. "What just happened?" "You had a wedding," Adrian said, his tone possibly laced with a dark, bitter humor. "And then a divorce. Congratulations." A laugh escaped Elena. It was a sick, broken thing, a pure symptom of shock where no humor could live, yet she was powerless to stop it. Great, heaving peals of hysteria that were closer to sobs. Adrian did not try to quiet her. He simply held his ground, a solid presence letting the storm break. When the laughter finally died into a hollow, shivering silence, Elena focused on him, truly seeing him. "Why?" she asked. "What was the point of all this?" Adrian's expression was a mask. "Because Victor Drazi is a monster and no one deserves to be handed to a predator." "You don't know me." "I have the relevant data." The words were both a mystery and a profound threat. Before Elena could ask more, the driver cut in. "We've picked up a tail. 2 cars holding position." Elena twisted to look through the rear window. 2 black sedans were weaving through the cars behind them, closing the gap. "ETA to the safe house?" Adrian asked. 20 minutes, maybe 15 with aggressive routing." "Be aggressive." The SUV surged forward, slamming Elena back into the seat. They tore through Chicago's grid, bleeding through red lights and using alleys. The driver moving with a precision that suggested he had every escape route in the city memorized. Victor's cars stayed with them. "Marcus," Adrian said to the driver, his voice unnervingly calm in the chaos, "when we hit Lakeshore Drive, I want them gone. Completely." Elena's nails dug into the leather seat. "Who are you people?" "We're the reason you're not dead yet," Marcus answered from the front. "For anything else, you'll have to ask him. I just drive." They hit Lakeshore Drive, doing 70 miles per hour, the Chicago skyline smeared into a blur of glass and steel under a gray sky. Marcus threaded through traffic with inches to spare, forcing Elena to shut her eyes against the inevitable impact. When she opened them again, the pursuing cars were gone. "Threat removed at the merge," Marcus reported. "We're in the clear." Adrian's arm finally lost some of its rigid tension around her. "Good, stay sharp. Victor's persistence is a constant." "Victor will kill me," Elena said, the shock finally giving way to a deep cellular dread. "He'll kill all of us." "He will certainly try," Adrian allowed. "But to do that, he has to find us first." "This is Chicago. He owns 50% of this city. And I own the other 50. Adrian's eyes found hers, and in their depths, she saw something that was almost more frightening than Victor's emptiness. Certainty, a deep, unshakable belief. "Victor Drazi is a power, yes, but he is not a god. And to get to you, he has to go through me." "Why?" Elena asked again, her voice raw with desperation. "Why do you care? What am I to you?" Adrian turned his face to the window, to the vast cold gray of the lake. "You are someone who deserved better than to be property," he said finally. It was not an answer, but it was all she was going to get. They drove north, leaving the heart of the city behind. The buildings grew larger, set further apart. Greenery began to swallow the concrete. At last, Marcus turned onto a private road that cut through a thick forest, ending at a gate that belonged on a military base. Marcus entered a code. The gate slid open. Beyond it, Elena saw the house. It was built into a hillside overlooking the lake, a severe slash of stone and glass. It was beautiful and cold at once, protected by high walls, cameras, and men in dark suits who watched their approach with flat professional eyes. "Welcome home," Adrian said. The way he said it raised the hair on Elena's arms. This was not a home. It was a prison. She had only traded one cage for another. Marcus stopped the car at the main entrance. Before Elena could move, Adrian was out and opening her door, offering his hand again. She hesitated. That hand had pulled her from the church, from Victor, into this terrifying unknown. But what other choice did she have? She took it, letting him help her out. The October wind was sharper here, a cold blade off the lake that cut through her ruined dress. She was freezing, terrified, and so completely lost, she had no idea which way was up. Adrian shrugged off his suit jacket and draped it over her shoulders. It was warm from his body and smelled of expensive cologne and gunpowder. "Come," he said. "Let's get you inside." The mansion's interior was as imposing as its exterior, all polished stone, severe modern art, and magazine-perfect furniture. Elena barely saw it. Her attention was locked on the people. 4 of them stood in the main room. 3 men and a woman, all dressed in dark, practical clothes, all watching her with expressions that shifted between detached interest and outright suspicion. "This is the asset?" the woman asked. She looked to be in her 30s, Elena thought, with dark hair pulled into a tight knot and eyes that seemed to dissect everything they saw. "She's unimpressive." "She presents as someone who just broke free from Victor Drazi," Adrian stated, his tone an unmistakable threat. "Which means she's either incredibly brave or suicidally foolish. Either way, she is now mine to protect. Pass the word. Any agent who approaches her without my authorization answers directly to me." The very air in the room grew colder, dropping by at least 10 degrees. It hit Elena then. These men didn't just respect Adrian, they were terrified of him. What had she fallen into? Adrian added with a nod. "Take Elena to the guest suite. See that she has everything she needs, clothes, food, whatever, and put a guard on her door." "To keep her in or others out?" Ree asked. "Both." A cold knot formed in Elena's stomach. "I'm a prisoner." "You're protected," Adrian corrected, his voice flat. "There is a difference." "Is there?" Elena pulled his jacket tighter around her frame. "Because from where I'm standing, the two feel one and the same." For the first time, a flicker of what might have been respect showed in Adrian's eyes. "Fair enough. Then allow me to be blunt. You are not being held. You can leave at any time. You could walk out that door this second." Elena's eyes darted to the door, then back to him. "And Victor's men would kill me before I reached the road, so my freedom to leave is an illusion." "You are free to make your own choice," Adrian said, "but choices have consequences. Stay, and you live. Leave, and you die. That isn't me controlling you. That's simply reality." It was, Elena had to admit, a brutally frank assessment that only made her situation feel worse. "For how long?" she whispered. "How long must I stay here? Until Victor gives up on his prize? Until he decides to forget me?" Adrian's face was grim. "Victor never gives up, and he never forgets. The answer, therefore, is indefinitely." Elena felt the last of her adrenaline drain away, leaving her hollow and spent. Her legs began to tremble, and she had to lock her knees to remain standing. Ree stepped closer, her expression softening just a fraction. "Come," she urged, her voice now gentle. "The guest needs stabilization. We will arrange for nourishment and a wash." Elena's first instinct was to fight, to demand answers, to comprehend the sudden demolition of her world. But Ree's analysis was correct. She was on the verge of collapse. Her balance was failing, her vision tunneling. "Acknowledged," she conceded. Ree led her through the massive home, up a grand staircase, and along a corridor of closed doors. The suite assigned to her was larger than her entire former apartment. A bedroom, a bathroom, a sitting room, all decorated in a neutral palette meant to be calming, but which felt utterly clinical. "The sanitation facility is through there," Ree gestured. "An attendant will bring clothing in your size. Dinner is at 1900 hours if you care to join us, or a tray can be brought to you." I'll eat here, Elena replied. The idea of pretending to be normal at a table with Adrian and his men was more than she could stomach. Ree simply nodded. As you wish. And Elena, for the record, you made the right move. Victor would have annihilated you. As opposed to this? Elena's gesture took in her gilded cage. Yes, reconfirmed, her voice flat. As opposed to this. She left, and Elena heard the soft click of the door, followed a moment later by the sound of boots taking a stationary position outside, a guard for her protection and for her surveillance. Elena went to the window to look out at the lake. It was a vast, gray, and cold body of water, its surface roughened by the wind. An entity both wild and contained. The water could go anywhere, but it could never stop being water. She understood the paradox. Her phone vibrated inside the purse Celeste had given her. Could that have been only this morning? Time felt warped and unreal. Sarah, where are you? Your father says you ran off with a stranger, and Victor is furious. Please confirm you are safe. Elena stared at the text. How could she begin to explain any of this? I am safe, she finally typed. I cannot talk right now. I will explain when I'm able. Do not worry. It was a lie. Sarah would be frantic. But what other message could Elena possibly send? As she put the phone away, it lit up with a new text from an unknown number. You have made a grave error, Elena, but my capacity for forgiveness is vast. Return in 24 hours, and this will be forgotten. After that, the offer is withdrawn. Victor. The shaking in Elena's hand returned. She read the message 3 times, her mind racing. Was it possible? Would he truly forgive her if she went back? No. Victor Drazi never forgave. This was a baited trap, a ploy to make her return to his grasp willingly. Once there, she would be his forever. She deleted the text and blocked the number. Then, because her hands still trembled and her thoughts were fracturing, she knew she had to act to prevent a complete breakdown. Elena walked into the bathroom and turned on the shower. The water was scalding, close to the edge of pain, but she stood under the spray until her skin was flushed red and the last scent of the church was washed away, until she could breathe without feeling Victor's phantom gaze upon her. When she emerged, wrapped in a towel softer than any she had ever known, she saw that someone had been in her room. A set of clothes lay on the bed, jeans, sweaters, and underwear, still in its packaging, all in her size. How did they know her size? That question led to more unsettling ones. How much information did Adrian have on her? How long had this operation been planned? And most importantly, what was his motive? Elena dressed in jeans and a soft gray sweater, both of which fit her perfectly. Her bridal gown was a ruined mess on the floor. She picked it up, feeling the heavy weight of the destroyed fabric, and felt a savage sense of satisfaction at its state. The dress was a costume for a life she had just rejected. She threw it into the wastebasket. A knock at the door made her flinch. Yes, your dinner, a male voice called out. Elena opened it to find a young man holding a tray. He looked no older than 25, with sandy hair and a kind expression that seemed out of place in this cold environment. My name is Ethan, he said with a smile. I'm the household coordinator. If you need anything at all, I'm your person. A time machine, Elena suggested. Ethan's smile grew. We're currently out of stock. However, I can offer you pot roast, mashed potatoes, green beans, and a slice of pie. Despite everything, Elena's stomach growled. She hadn't eaten anything since her coffee that morning, too wound up for solid food. Thank you, she said as she took the tray. Ethan nodded and started to leave, but then he paused. Listen, I know this is an extremely weird situation, but Adrian is a good man. It may not seem like it right now, but you are safe here. Safer than you have been in a very long time. How can you be so sure of that? Elena asked. Because I know for a fact what Victor Drossi does to his possessions. Ethan's friendly expression vanished. And believe me, you do not want to learn that firsthand. He left before Elena could question him further. She ate the meal by herself. The food was tasteless, despite being perfectly cooked. Outside the window, the sun sank below the lake's edge, painting the water in fiery shades of orange and red. Out in the world, Victor was planning his revenge. Inside this house, Adrian was planning... What? What did he want from her? And deep within her own soul, Elena felt the first stirrings of an emotion she hadn't felt in months. Not fear, not acceptance, but pure rage. She had been bartered, traded, kidnapped, and imprisoned. Her entire life had been controlled by men who saw her as an object, a bargaining chip, anything but a person with her own free will. That was over now. Elena Cross had no idea what the future held. She couldn't know if she would survive the next week, month, or year. She couldn't tell if Adrian was her savior or just a different kind of warden in a fancier prison. But she knew one thing with absolute certainty. She was no longer anyone's property. Whatever came next, she would face it on her own 2 feet. And if Victor Drossi or Adrian Vale or anyone else thought she was an easy target, they were about to learn a very painful lesson. The prize they were fighting over had claws, and she was ready to use them. As night bled across the lake, Elena Cross began charting the grim calculus of her own survival. A conflict below her window had torn her from a shallow, haunted sleep. Every groan of the house, every footfall down the corridor had been a surge of adrenaline, the conviction that Victor's men had finally broken through. But the cold, gray dawn had come and she was still breathing. A small, hollow victory. Moving to the window, she saw Adrian and Marcus on the lawn by the water's edge. Their words were lost to the glass, but their bodies spoke a clear language of conflict. Marcus's hands sliced the air, his face a mask of fury. Adrian stood as a statue, his expression a blank slate, simply watching. Then, a low murmur from Adrian cut Marcus off completely. After a tense beat, Marcus gave a sharp nod and stalked away, his spine a rigid line of defeat. Adrian remained, his gaze fixed on the water as if pleading with the waves for some hidden truth. Elena pulled back from the glass just before he could turn and catch her watching. Being labeled a spy was a complication she could ill afford. On the nightstand, her phone glowed. 3 messages from untraceable numbers confirmed Victor's new strategy. Time is running out, Elena. Your father begs me to bring you home. Shall I tell him you chose a stranger over family? I expected more from you. This is a disappointment. Elena erased them, refusing him the satisfaction of a reply. To respond was to admit his psychological war was landing its blows, and it was. A sudden rap on the door sent a jolt through her. Who is it? It's Ree. Adrian wants you. Breakfast is in 20 minutes. Not a request, Elena noted, but a command. I'll be right down, she answered. She showered, pulled on more borrowed clothes, and tried to tame her hair into something that didn't scream of a mind under siege. It was no use. The woman in the mirror had dark circles under her eyes, skin like parchment, and a hard-set mouth she'd inherited from her mother in anger. Her mother, gone 3 years now, was mercifully unaware that her husband would one day offer their child as a bargaining chip. and the cold light of day that felt like a kindness. Elena followed the scent of brewing coffee downstairs. The kitchen was a cold industrial theater of stainless steel and marble devoid of any warmth. 6 figures sat at a long table, Adrian at the head, Marcus and Ree flanking him, and 3 faces she didn't know. Every head snapped toward her as she entered. "Elena," Adrian's voice was flat, devoid of emotion. "Sit!" The empty chair was at the opposite end of the table, a calculated island of isolation. She took it, feeling the weight of 6 sets of eyes tracking her every move. Ethan appeared with a plate holding eggs, bacon, and toast, offering it with the same gentle smile as last night. "Coffee, please," Elena murmured, his simple decency a lifeline in a room full of predators. "For those who weren't here yesterday," Adrian began after Ethan had retreated, "this is Elena Cross. She is under my protection. You've met Rhea and Marcus." He introduced the others, Nikolai, James, and Sophia. Nikolai was a brute carved from granite, a jagged scar across his cheek telling a story of violence. James had the look of a scholar, but his eyes never stopped scanning the room for threats. Sophia, near Elena's own age, had a smile that was dangerously disarming. The hostility was immediate. Nikolai, his Russian accent thick, questioned the plan to keep her safe until Victor simply lost interest. Elena cut him off, explaining with cold clarity that a man like Victor doesn't lose interest, he seeks retribution. Nikolai observed her fire, and she shot back that she was, in fact, present and aware. Elena stated what they were all thinking, that she was a liability. She admitted it was true. She then defined her position as an unwilling pawn in a war between 2 dominant men. The remark drew a sharp, appreciative laugh from Sophia. "I like her," she said. Marcus shot back that courage doesn't stop a bullet. Adrian conceded the point, calling it a necessary start. He then turned his focus entirely on Elena, laying down the terms of her confinement. She would not leave the grounds, contact anyone from her past, or use any form of electronic communication. The rules were meant to erase her from the grid. Elena's hand clenched into a fist. This was a prison, not a sanctuary. Ree corrected her, calling it survival, and reported that Victor's hunt had begun. The criminal underworld of Chicago was either looking for her or waiting for the price to go up. Elena asked what she was worth. James answered quietly, $200,000 plus favors, which he added were more valuable than cash. The amount was a cruel joke against her old life as a photographer's assistant on a salary of $35,000 a year, a life of debt and feeling like a failure in her father's eyes. Elena's shock was plain. Adrian explained that this wasn't about her. It was about Victor making a public statement against the theft of his property. He made it clear her role in this was merely as the object of contention. The analysis felt alien to the terror she was living. Adrian continued that for a narcissist like Victor, business and ego are the same entity. A blow to one is a war against both. By leaving him at the altar, she had dealt him the ultimate public wound. A flicker of satisfaction, laced with venom, crossed Elena's face. Marcus warned that her smile meant she still didn't comprehend the danger she was in. When a man like Victor is shamed, he doesn't stop until he draws blood. Elena's voice cracked with emotion, retorting that it would have been better for everyone if he had just killed her at the church. Adrian corrected her coolly, informing her they were involved long before the wedding. Her demand for an explanation was ignored. Adrian steered the conversation back to their security. Marcus reported that surveillance had picked up 2 cars, driving reconnaissance patterns around the property, testing their defenses. Adrian gave the order to double the patrols, demanding eyes on every possible entry point. Rhee asked for intel from their contacts. James confirmed Victor was using his network but keeping his own name clean. The chatter, however, spoke of a man in a profound narcissistic rage. He was pulling in favors and muscle from New York, Detroit, and Miami, turning a personal vendetta into a multi-state manhunt. The news landed like a physical blow, making the sheer scale of Victor's obsessive reach terrifyingly real for Elena. She suggested fleeing the country, a desperate, naive idea. Adrian shot it down, listing Victor's connections across 15 nations and stating that if she ran, she would be dead in under 48 hours. Elena then asked if she was to be his prisoner forever. The goal, Adrian clarified, was to neutralize the threat entirely. A bitter laugh escaped Elena's lips. She knew the euphemism meant they planned to kill him. Adrian conceded it was one possibility among several, mentioning that Victor's empire had weak points they could exploit. Elena called it blackmail. Adrian called it staying alive. The steel in his eyes dared her to challenge the grim reality he was painting. He forced her to face what Victor would actually do to her, that his goal was not a quick death, but prolonged agony. As that horrifying truth sank in, Elena's fight finally broke. Her surrender was born of the devastating insight that every choice, from her father's gambling to her own escape, had forged the bars of this cage. She agreed to do what they asked. When she asked what they needed, Adrian slid a small data drive across the table. He told her to think back 3 weeks to a corporate photo shoot at the Meridian Hotel. The memory was a blur of suits and meaningless handshakes. Adrian then supplied the missing piece. 2 of the guests were Senator Mitchell Carson and Victor Drosy, standing together in several of her photographs. Elena scoffed at the idea that powerful men knew each other. James cut in, explaining that the senator was supposedly leading a major investigation into illegal arms trafficking. The man he was photographed with, James finished, runs one of the largest weapons smuggling operations in the Midwest. The blood drained from Elena's face as comprehension dawned. Adrian confirmed it, tapping the drive that held every picture she took that day. On one, magnified and enhanced, a shipping manifest was partially visible on a table behind them. It detailed a massive arms transfer to buyers the federal government was very interested in. He then added they didn't need her to testify about what the picture showed. They demanded a complete tapestry of the event, the placement of every person, snippets of conversation, any fragment to rebuild the scene. In Elena's eyes, the drive was a lit fuse. Rhee countered that Victor's intent to kill was already proven. This was a weapon for his cage, not a shield for her defense. Adrian added that inaction was a greater sin than failure. It was her own fury at being seen as Victor's property that ultimately fueled her choice. Victor's instinct to own and control her had ignited a profound resistance. Elena would cooperate, but on her own terms, demanding information as her price. Adrian registered her immediate shift to a transactional footing. She met his stare, asking for the true reason he had crashed her wedding and continued to watch over her. The question hung in the charged air, a clear transgression. Adrian shattered the silence, rising and commanding her to follow. He led her to an exposed terrace, where the grim weather was a prelude to his confession. The story began 3 years back, when Victor Drosy made a play for his territory. A supposed parley was broken when Victor executed 4 of his men in a display of brutal faithlessness. Elena held her breath, knowing the tale was unfinished. Then came the final detail. One of those men was his younger brother. He waved away her sympathy. his voice hollow as he said his brother knew the risks. Victor's act was a debt that could only be paid through a slow, patient search for a chink in his armor, and she, Elena realized, was that vulnerability. Adrienne corrected her. She was an opportunity, a fatal flaw in Victor's design. His eyes, cold and analytical, met hers. He admitted that when he saw her engagement photos, recognizing her from a past event, he knew she was the unwitting key to the leverage he needed. A shadow of disappointment crossed her features, a clear hope for a more noble motive dashed. "You didn't rescue me," she stated. "You acquired an asset." He conceded a dual purpose, admitting that had she not been so valuable, he would have let her be. Adrienne offered no heroic facade, a calculated choice to distinguish himself from her past tormentors. He stated a cold truth. Her freedom was a beneficial outcome, separate from any noble intent. This brutal honesty resonated with a woman conditioned by a lifetime of manipulative lies. Her query about her future held the classic anxiety of a captive. Adrienne's response was strategic, a promise of non-confinement to ensure her alliance, framing it as liberation, not another form of ownership. When freedom was presented as the final reward, her distrust was predictable. Adrienne countered that his power was psychological, not proprietary, unlike the methods of her father and Victor. He offered a simple choice: help him destroy their aggressor and reclaim herself. This wasn't true freedom, but a controlled alternative. Searching his face, Elena saw no deceit, only weariness and a deep-seated hatred. Her conditional agreement was a pivotal step toward regaining power, an attempt to set rules in this new hierarchy. She demanded a role in the operation, a predictable surge after total powerlessness. Adrienne's refusal, couched as protection, felt to Elena like a familiar brand of control. She saw the mansion's safety as just another cage, decrying the pattern of men, her father, Victor, and now him, who dictated her life. Her ultimatum to risk her own life on her own terms was a declaration of psychological independence, a rejection of the victim. She chose to actively shape her fate rather than passively endure it. A flicker of recognition in Adrienne's eyes betrayed a shared survivor's instinct. He dismissed her plea as naive. Elena pushed back with cold logic, transforming her learned ability to be invisible, a professional tool, into a tactical weapon. Her unobtrusiveness, she argued, allowed a closeness his armed men could never achieve. She was reframing her weakness as an essential strength. Their needs, she insisted, were linked. Her access was crucial to his goals far beyond her testimony. Adrienne's long stare was a clinical assessment of her offer. The barest hint of a smile acknowledged her strategic mind. "Very brave or completely insane," he murmured. "A bit of both," she conceded. He regained control by tabling the decision, issuing a non-negotiable order for her to be secured. For Elena, even this delay was a crucial win, a first foothold in his command. Her curt "fine" was a pragmatic compromise. She insisted that her handler not treat her like a fragile victim. Adrienne assigned Sophia, a woman he knew was incapable of coddling. Before going, Elena asked about his late brother, Daniel, a deft move to turn their transaction into a shared quest for vengeance. Inside, she found Sophia, whose relaxed posture radiated a predator's calm. Sophia immediately analyzed the confrontation, placing Elena somewhere between foolish and courageous. "You negotiated terms with Adrienne Vale," Sophia noted. "That suggests you're either monumentally stupid or have more nerve than any man in this place." Elena allowed for both possibilities. Sophia's laugh was a form of acceptance. She then started a tour, calling it a lesson in survival. Elena asked if the threat was internal. Sophia's expression hardened as she confirmed that danger here was constant, coming from all directions, inside and out. Trust, she made clear, was earned, never given. Every camera, sensor, and alarm fed into this nerve center. They watched a technician named Tommy juggling multiple data feeds. Sophia introduced Elena as the cause of the current high alert. Tommy confirmed he was tracking increased hostile movement at the perimeter. Victor's forces were escalating. When Elena asked by how much, he showed her thermal imaging of 3 separate scout teams from the previous night. Their mission was clear: map the defenses and find a way through. Her anxiety surfaced as a question about their security. Sophia's reply was blunt. There are always weaknesses. The game is to fix them faster than the enemy finds them. Elena's own vulnerability was reflected back at her from the monitors. Her quiet question about whether they could survive was met by a knowing glance between Sophia and Tommy. Sophia's voice was steel, assuring her that for Adrienne, failure was not a conceivable outcome. "We're going to the armory," Sophia announced. When Elena hesitated, Sophia explained that if the walls were breached, self-defense was not optional. The unspoken truth was that Victor had never taught her to defend herself. The thought of a weapon sent a chill through Elena, yet she understood the cold logic. The armory was a subterranean vault, its walls lined with a deadly arsenal. Sophia told her to pick a handgun, an order Elena initially refused, stammering that she couldn't. "This is a Glock 19 9mm, Sophia said, listing its merits. She adjusted Elena's grip with swift, certain movements, then drilled her on the fundamental rules of safety. A tremor started in Elena's hands. The gun's weight felt immense, unnatural. Her whispered, "I can't do this," was met by Sophia's unwavering command, who reminded her the alternative was to become a victim again, making all her struggles meaningless. Elena's surrender to the training marked a profound internal shift. An hour passed on the basement range. Her first shots were wild, her body flinching from the recoil, but slowly through repetition, her movements steadied and her aim improved. When it was over, her ears rang and a deep ache settled into her, far worse than simple fatigue. Sophia's clipped assessment, "Not bad," was all the encouragement she needed. Daily training was now on the schedule. "In a week, you'll be proficient," Sophia told her. "In a month, you'll have a better chance of survival." Elena hoped she'd never need it. "Our motto is hope for the best, train for the worst," Sophia said. After, Elena moved through her meal on autopilot, her mind consumed by the memory of the firearm. She felt herself fracturing. The woman she once was now a dead stranger, her life having ended at that aborted wedding. This new self, born of fire and shadow, was still raw and unstable. For 4 days, a rhythm of pain settled in, her body conditioned by Sophia, her mind dissected by an analyst, James. They sifted through photographs of the event, hunting for ghosts in the background. Her memory was a shattered mirror, a symptom of the trauma. She'd been a professional on a job, blind to the rot underneath. On the 4th day, James froze a frame, isolating a figure in a gray suit, lurking at the edge of the world. James pushed Elena to recall the man in the photograph. But the face was a blur, lost in the sensory chaos of the moment. The operative supplied a name, Thomas Garrett, a man known for skirting customs laws. Elena bristled at the flood of information, her mind already saturated. James countered coolly that in this world, just being near something was enough. He slid a tablet toward her, Turning from fractured memory to hard, cold data, the image on the tablet was obscured, a ghost of a spreadsheet on its screen. Elena confessed she had moved through the event like an automaton, a self-preservation that erased the details. James suggested they try to wake those dormant memories, but the doubt in her eyes was palpable. The attempt was cut short by the appearance of Marcus. The grim set of his jaw announced that the crisis had just found a new, sharper edge. A directive from their leader, Adrian, sent a tremor of ice through Elena's veins. The tension in the room thickened, a shared anxiety coiling around them. Adrian stood with a chilling detachment as he revealed their enemy. Vittorio was making his move. He played the surveillance feed. The footage was brutal and swift. A violent home invasion, a raw display of Vittorio's power and intent to intimidate. The recording ended with a woman being dragged from the home. A flicker of recognition, then a gut-wrenching shock. It was Sarah, a colleague. Adrian's voice cut through the horror, explaining Vittorio's game, using a friend as a weapon of psychological warfare. Then Vittorio's own message arrived, a photo and an offer of exchange. It was a perfectly engineered strike, aimed directly at Elena's heart. Elena's mind fractured, fixating on Sarah's loyalty, a debt she could never repay. The others saw the move for what it was, a trap meant to punish, not to bargain. Elena looked to Adrian, searching for a sliver of hope, but his eyes confirmed the bleak reality. He called the situation by its true name, a theater of cruelty staged by a malignant narcissist. Adrian laid out Vittorio's psychosis. He wanted Elena to watch Sarah die before he killed her, to inflict the maximum possible agony. Adrian's strategy was simple: do nothing. Elena recoiled at the cold logic, unable to see Sarah as a pawn. Adrian's rebuttal was a cruel, simple math. Acting would mean 2 bodies, not 1. That calculation was a wound from which her soul began to bleed. A crushing sense of guilt and duty drove Elena to defy him. "I'm going alone," she declared, refusing his direct command. A standoff electrified the room, a silent clash of wills. Adrian's voice dropped, laced with a terrifying finality. He told her the unsparing truth. Going alone was suicide, and it wouldn't change Sarah's fate by 1 second. "This is my fault," Elena whispered, a distorted belief taking root. Adrian stepped in, trying to rewire her thinking, to place the blame in the monster, Vittorio. He gripped her shoulders, forcing her to see him, and asked her what Sarah would want. But her reply showed her broken logic. She saw self-sacrifice as the ultimate form of loyalty. Adrian changed his approach, channeling her ferocious impulse. He proposed a 48-hour hold for intelligence gathering. Another agent, Reese, supported him, exposing the artificial deadline as a tool to provoke a mistake. Elena was a storm of agitation and helplessness. Her quiet question about what would happen to Sarah in those 48 hours exposed her raw, unending fear. Sophia offered a new path forward, a single idea that cut through Elena's grief. "This isn't a rescue," she said. "It's retribution." Elena's hand stopped trembling, a reluctant acceptance. Adrian seized the moment, delegating tasks with sharp precision, turning their collective fear into action. James would hunt for Vittorio's hideouts. Marcus would lean on his contacts inside the department. As the team erupted into focused activity, Elena remained frozen, a statue haunted by the images on the screen. Adrian approached, offering a quiet word, but she met him with a venomous glare, retreating back into her cavern of self-blame. She tortured herself with what-ifs, believing that if she had just complied with Vittoria's demands, none of this would have happened. Adrian shattered her delusion with brutal honesty. If she had surrendered, Vittoria would have either broken her mind or put a bullet in it. He declared her guilt a useless indulgence and ordered her to work. Numbly, she obeyed. For the next 6 hours, the structured task of sifting through data was the only thing that kept the screaming inside her at bay. The work was a fragile shield. At the stroke of midnight, Vittorio attacked again. His message was a venomous whisper of blame, accompanied by a new photo showing fresh brutality. He laid out a schedule of coming tortures, a metronome counting down to hell. A violent shudder racked Elena's body. James insisted it was a bluff, but his words were hollow and offered no comfort. James voiced the obvious truth. Vittoria's goal was to make her unstable, to cloud her judgment so she would make a fatal error. A shared look confirmed they both knew the threat was real. Elena excused herself, seeking a moment to let the horror wash over her in private. When she returned, the terror in her eyes had been replaced by glacial resolve. This new, cold focus accelerated their hunt, and by morning they had a location. It was an abandoned warehouse in the industrial district, held by a shell corporation tied to Vittorio's web. "She's here," Adrian said, his finger tapping a satellite image from Tommy. "It's isolated, defensible, and close enough for a quick escape." "What's our way in?" Elena asked, running on more than 24 hours of caffeine and dread. "No," Adrian replied flatly. "Not yet. We watch first, confirm she's there, count the guards, map the routes. We need 12 hours, maybe less." He studied her. "I know you want to go now, but rushing in gets people killed. She's already broken, and our failure will only break her more," Adrian stated with clinical precision. "Trust my experience. Patience is how you survive." Elena wanted to argue, but she lacked the scars that Adrian wore. She nodded. It became the longest 12 hours of her existence. Sophia took her to the firing range, sensing she needed an outlet for the rage. Elena burned through 200 rounds, her aim improving as instinct took over. "You're getting good at this," Sophia noted. "I hate it," Elena shot back, reloading. "Every shot is a rehearsal for killing someone." "Don't rehearse." "If it happens," Sophia said, "your body will know what to do. Thinking will get you killed." "Is that supposed to help?" "It's a fact." Sophia checked the weapon and handed it back. "You're a survivor, Elena, not a killer. There's a difference." "And if I have to kill to survive?" "Then you do it, and you deal with it after." Sophia's expression was like stone. Guilt is a luxury for the living. The idea was so foreign to Elena's code, she couldn't accept it. But she filed it away, a dark tool for a future she prayed would never come. As dusk fell, Marcus and Nikolai finished their surveillance. "We have confirmation," Marcus stated. "Floor 2, northwest corner. I counted 3 hostiles, but expect more inside. Victor isn't present. He's far too careful for that. His lieutenant, a man named Ramos, is running the show." Adrian repeated the name, his face hardening. "Ramos. In many ways, he is more depraved than Victor. He finds pleasure in the work." A cold sickness gripped Elena. "What is the plan?" "We move tonight, in 2 teams. I'll take Marcus and Nikolai through the main entrance as a distraction. Reese, Sophia, you go in from the roof, retrieve Sarah, and pull back." "And what about me?" Elena demanded. "You will wait here." "That is completely unacceptable." A muscle tightened in Adrian's jaw. "This is not a negotiation." "Everything is a negotiation. You taught me that," Elena retorted, standing her ground. "Sarah doesn't know any of you. If she's traumatized, she will fight strangers, but she'll come with me." "That's exactly what makes you a tactical risk," Reese cut in. Your emotional investment is a compromise that gets people killed. Or it's the only thing that guarantees Sarah's survival, as I'm the one person who can build a rapport with her. Elena met Adrian's eyes. You said you wanted me to choose. I am choosing this. Adrian watched her for a long moment before giving an unexpected nod. Fine, but you follow protocol exactly. No improvisation. You will follow Sophia's orders the moment she gives them. Understood, Elena agreed, a conflicting wave of terror and relief flooding her. Then get ready, Sophia said, her eyes appraising Elena. We move in 2 hours. Those 120 minutes passed in a surreal haze. Sophia fitted Elena with black tactical gear, drilled her at the comms unit, and had her repeat the plan until it was second nature. They gave Elena a Glock, the model she'd trained with, and extra magazines that felt like solid lead in her pockets. The odds of you using it are low, Sophia remarked. But low is not zero. The drive to the warehouse was steeped in silence. Elena sat wedged between Sophia and Reese in a plain van, her heart hammering so hard she feared it would break her ribs. In the front seats, Marcus drove, while Adrian went over the plan a final time. They came to a stop 3 blocks from the target. At this hour, the industrial park was a dead zone, a landscape of hollowed-out buildings and failing streetlights, perfect for a covert operation. Comms check. Adrian's voice was a whisper. Each agent confirmed. Elena's own voice shook, but her connection held. The teams broke apart. Marcus, Nikolai, and Adrian moved toward the main building. Reese, Sophia, and Elena circled to the back, toward a rusted fire escape that clawed its way to the roof. Climb, Sophia breathed, motioning upward. The ascent was terrifying. The metal groaned under their weight, and Elena's hands slicked with sweat in the cold, but she made it to the top without a sound. The roof of the warehouse was a desolate plain of gravel and debris. A lone access hatch promised entry into the building below. Reese examined the lock, pulled out a small kit, and bypassed it in less than 30 seconds. They descended into utter darkness. Inside, the warehouse was a maze of hallways and vacant rooms, starkly lit by the occasional bare bulb. Elena heard voices from the lower level. Guards or something worse. Her fingers tightened on the Glock's grip. Sophia led them from memory and a schematic, moving through the second floor toward the northwest quadrant. They passed chambers filled with skeletal machinery, offices stripped bare, and bathrooms straight out of a horror film. Then Sophia balled her hand into a fist. The signal to stop. A sliver of light escaped from under a door ahead, carrying the low murmur of 2 men talking. Target location is confirmed, Reese whispered into his mic. 2 tangos outside. On your go. Copy that, Adrian's voice came back. 30 seconds. The half-minute stretched into an eternity. Then, in the distance, Elena heard the sharp crack of the main door being breached. Shouts erupted, followed by gunfire. The 2 men guarding Sarah's room reacted immediately, drawing weapons as they moved toward the commotion. Reese and Sophia were predators, swift, silent, and final. The guards were neutralized before they could make a sound, one falling to Reese's rifle stock, the other disabled by Sophia in a blur of motion. Clear, Sophia announced, testing the door. Locked. Reese fired a single shot into the lock mechanism. The sound was explosive in the narrow hall. They breached the room, a cramped space thick with the scent of fear and old blood. Sarah was there, bound to a chair, just as the photo had shown, her face bruised and swollen, her eyes wide with a mix of terror and disbelief. Elena, she whispered, I'm here, Elena said, rushing to her side. I'm here. I've got you. Her hands shook as she fumbled with the restraints on Sarah's wrists. They were pulled brutally tight, cutting into the skin, and her fingers struggled to undo them. Faster, Sophia urged, her gaze fixed on the doorway. We have maybe 2 minutes before they send backup. I'm trying. Elena freed one of Sarah's hands, then the other. Sarah sagged forward into her arms. She felt unnervingly light, her body racked with uncontrollable tremors. Can you walk? Reese asked. I think so. A fresh volley of gunfire echoed from downstairs, closer this time, punctuated by organized, angry shouts. We have to go, Sophia says. Now! They half-carried Sarah between them, navigating back through the bewildering corridors. Elena's world shrank to the sound of Sarah's ragged breaths, the dead weight of her friend, and the frantic pounding in her own chest. From behind, the thud of running feet. Contact rear, Reese yelled, spinning and firing. The first pursuer dropped, but the sound of others echoed from below. Elena heard the rhythmic, violent ascent of boots on the stairs. Move! Now! Sophia screamed, her weapon spitting, suppressing fire. They clawed their way up to the roof hatch. Sarah's foot slipped, a moment of vertigo, before Elena's hand shot out, pulling her upward with a raw surge of adrenaline. They spilled onto the rooftop, gasping in the biting wind, the fire escape a skeletal ladder to freedom. Go! Ree commanded. Their descent was a frantic, controlled fall, Sarah crying out with each jarring step as Elena's grip fought the freezing metal. On the roof behind them, silhouettes rose, weapons leveling. Sparks flew as bullets bit into the steel frame around them. Elena felt the whisper of a round slice the air beside her ear, but they touched ground. Marcus was there, the van's engine a low growl, the side door gaping open. Get in, he ordered. They tumbled inside. The vehicle lurched forward before the door was sealed, tires screaming as they tore away from the warehouse. Elena cradled Sarah, who wept into her shoulder, a shattered but living thing. We made it, Elena murmured, the words a balm for them both. You're safe now, I've got you. The warehouse vanished behind them, but its shadow lingered. We're not going to the mansion. A predictable move, Adrian said from the passenger seat, his voice a tightly coiled wire of adrenaline. Victor knows she's with us. He'll expect us to return to our primary base. We're going to the safe house. Elena barely heard him. Her focus was entirely on Sarah, who had fallen silent, her body rigid in Elena's arms. Shock, she guessed. Or worse. She needs a doctor, Elena said. We have one at the safe house, Reese replied, already on her phone. Dr. Chen. He's discreet, I'm calling him now. The safe house was a unit in a generic apartment block in an unremarkable part of the city, a place designed to be ignored. Marcus drove them into a subterranean parking garage, and they used a service elevator to bring Sarah upstairs, avoiding every camera and potential witness. The safe house was a sterile, impersonal space designed for temporary stays. Elena guided Sarah to a sofa, keeping a hand on her shoulder to ground her. Sarah was exhibiting the classic signs of severe trauma, a 1,000-yard stare and shallow, rapid breathing. Elena tried to soothe her. Sarah, it's me. You're safe now. For a moment, recognition flickered in her eyes, followed by a gut-wrenching sob. She finally verbalized the psychological torture they had used, a lie designed to break her. They told me you were dead, Sarah choked out. They said Victor killed you, and it was all my fault. Elena immediately refuted the poison. None of this is your fault. Do you understand me? Before Sarah could answer, a doctor, an Asian man in his 60s named Dr. Chen, entered the room. He approached Sarah with a calm professionalism, his eyes already taking in the extent of her injuries. I need to take a look at her, he said gently. Elena stepped back, watching his careful, methodical examination. Sarah flinched at his touch but did not resist. The doctor gave his diagnosis without preamble. 2 fractured ribs, a probable concussion, and numerous bruises and cuts. Nothing that requires stitches. He documented her dehydration and malnutrition, but noted her condition was stable. Regarding her prognosis, he drew a line between the body and the mind. Physically, she would mend. Her emotional recovery, clouded by a vacant gaze, was impossible to predict. He administered pain relief and dressed her wounds, his patient remaining a silent, hollowed figure. Elena's unwavering presence seemed to be her only anchor. The medic concluded with standard concussion protocol: 2 days of rest and vigilant observation for any decline. Inform me of any change, he said, vanishing as quietly as he had appeared. In another room, the low, urgent voices of Adriana, Marcus, and Nikolai wove a strategy of retaliation and endgame. Elena recused herself, her focus narrowed to Sarah's immediate care, guiding her toward the shower. Beneath the spray, Sarah stood in a state of catatonic stillness, the water washing away the grime of her ordeal, but leaving the deeper psychological wounds untouched. Dressed in clothes that swallowed her small frame, Sarah was guided to a bed. Elena's soft command to sleep was met with a surge of desperate fear. Sarah's hand clamped onto her wrist with shocking strength, her voice a plea, "Don't leave me." Elena gave her assurance and remained. Soon, the sheer weight of exhaustion pulled Sarah under, her grip slackening. Her sleep was a theater of trauma, marked by twitches from phantom threats and the silent tracks of tears. Elena felt the weight of her own complicity settle in, a guilt distinct from the story Victor had engineered. Victor's cruelty was his own, but she had set the stage. Her choices had placed Sarah directly in his path. This dark reflection was broken by Adrian's silent entry. He asked after Sarah, and Elena's reply was stark, stripped of emotion. Asleep, broken, alive. Adrian offered a word of encouragement, but she met it with cold self-blame. He tried to frame the rescue as a shared victory, but she had already pivoted to threat analysis, dissecting Victor's narcissistic rage and his need for brutal reprisal. "He'll throw everything he has at us now," she stated. Adrian did not disagree, outlining their plan to strike first, to decapitate the threat before Victor could rally. Their weapon was a collection of damning photographs tying Victor to a trio of federal offenses, from arms trafficking to conspiracy for murder. With a witness to testify, the goal was his permanent removal. Yet this calculated victory offered Elena no solace, leaving only a cold void. The operation was scheduled for dawn, with coordinated federal strikes. "By noon tomorrow, Victor Drazi is in a federal cell," Adrian declared, his certainty absolute. "The case is ironclad." But Elena's past had taught her to distrust iron. She brought the focus back to the human cost. And Sarah? The girl was now a material witness, her name at the top of a kill list. Adrian recited the protocol. A new name, a new city, federal protection. He then offered his own security as an alternative, a gesture Elena heard as the closing of another cage. "Safety is not a prison," Adrian countered, a sharp edge to his tone. "I'm giving her the means to live." Elena dismantled his argument, recasting their entire dynamic as a cold transaction. You needed an asset. You found me. You needed a lover. You used me. She saw his protective offers as mere window dressing on that fundamental exchange. Adrian's jaw hardened at the charge. You believe that's all this is? But his true motives remained a shadowed country between them. With a curt instruction to get some rest, Adrian withdrew, leaving her alone with the unresolved tension. Sleep was a luxury Elena could not afford, her mind replaying Victor's methodology. She saw how his psychological warfare, the fabricated death and induced guilt, was a far more potent weapon than his fists. As if on cue, a scream tore through the quiet. Sarah was caught in a night terror. Elena was there instantly, her voice a low, steady anchor in the storm. You're safe? After long minutes, Sarah's tremors began to subside, her panic receding. Then came the inevitable flood of guilt, a symptom of the poison he'd injected. I'm so sorry, she wept over and over. Elena's denial was met with a raw, hysterical laugh and a confession. She had talked. Under pressure, she had given them small things, personal details about Elena's routines. Yet Sarah knew their strategic importance to a predator like Victor. He wanted to know. Elena pushed aside the intelligence breach, focusing only on the fact that Sarah had survived. She offered empty words of comfort, but internally, a new threat assessment was running. Sarah's words meant Victor could now turn Elena's own habits into weapons, her sanctuaries into traps. Leaving Sarah with Sophia, she found Adrian, Marcus, and James huddled around a laptop. Raids are a go in 20 minutes, James stated. Federal teams are staged at all 6 locations. An intel source fed them a live video feed. On screen, operators in tactical gear moved through a government building. The primary breach was Victor's home. Elena felt a cold knot of dread. She knew that estate from photos, the gilded cage intended for her after the wedding. It was a place of profound psychological horror, a future Adrian had saved her from. Agents smashed through the entrance, weapons raised as they fanned out into a cavernous, silent interior. The residence was a tomb. He's gone, James said, his voice strained. Marcus was already at the phone, his face hardening as he listened to his source. Negative at all targets, Marcus announced, confirming a catastrophic failure. His residence, his offices, all swept clean. Victor and his entire inner circle had vanished into thin air. He knew, Adrian stated with lethal calm. Someone warned him. Operational knowledge was restricted to this unit and federal task force, which implies a compromise. Adrian analyzed, his gaze sweeping the room. The poison of that implication filled the air. A traitor in their midst meant no place was safe, no plan secure. We find the source, Ree said, her voice cutting through the tension from the doorway, before we start counting bodies. Agreed. James, begin a full communications audit. Past 48 hours. I want every anomaly, Adrian commanded, turning to Marcus. Get the unit accounted for. Eyes on everyone until we know who we can trust. You think it's one of us? Nikolai's disbelief was sharp. One of your people? I think Vittorio knows how to buy what he can't break, and $200,000 is a very persuasive argument. The accusation hung in the room, thick and suffocating. Elena felt a fresh wave of fear. The very team meant to protect her was now fractured. The evidence, she asked. Isn't it enough to arrest him? They have to find him first, James answered grimly. And Vittorio is a ghost when he wants to be. Elena's phone buzzed. She pulled it out, steeling herself for another one of Vittorio's threats. But the message was from her father. Elena, Vittorio says this can all end if you come back. He's offering a full pardon. We can end this without more violence. Call me. She read the words, and a cold fury displaced her fear. Her father was brokering her life again, treating her autonomy as a commodity. She held the phone out to Adrian, its screen glowing. He's using your father, he analyzed. He's playing the part of the merciful man. The ploy was obvious, but it revealed everything. Vittorio's grip was failing. Your escape, followed by Sarah's rescue, was a wound to his ego. He was a cornered animal, desperate to reassert his power. Through some act of fake mercy, Elena's laugh was brittle. That's hardly believable. To his disciples it is. He can paint himself as the peaceful victim of our aggression, using it as a shield. Elena deleted the message, offering no reply. For the next several hours, paranoia was the only air to breathe. Tommy swept the rooms for bugs, while James hunted ghosts in the data streams. Adrienne questioned each person one-on-one, looking for the barest hint of a lie. Elena sat with Sarah, who seemed like a ghost, devoid of all joy. I have to go home, Sarah said at last. It's not safe yet. The world outside is hostile. This world right here is hostile, Sarah replied. Your entire existence, this life in the shadows. Her hand gestured to their gilded cage. I cannot live under this constant fear. I know. Please stop apologizing. Sarah's voice had an edge Elena had never heard. You are not the target of my anger. This isn't on you. It's the circumstances. Vittorio's sickness, your father's cowardice, and my own failures. Her voice cracked. Elena reached out, her touch a grounding force. You have incredible strength. To have survived is everything. I don't feel strong. I feel broken into pieces. Can't the pieces be put back together? Sarah whispered. I doubt I'll ever feel safe again. Every noise brings me back there. Her story ended on a shudder. Elena knew words were useless. She simply held her as the dam of grief finally broke. Much later, when exhaustion had dragged Sarah under, Elena found Adrian on the balcony, a silhouette against the city. The pale afternoon sun gave off no warmth, a cold reflection of the mood. Did you find anything? Elena asked. Nothing, so he's either a ghost or we're chasing the wrong shadow. Adrian's gaze was fixed on the horizon. Neither possibility is good. What's our next move? We watch and we wait. A man like Vittorio can't stay in the dark forever. His ego will force him out and we'll be there. So we just stay put? We stay ready, Adrian corrected, his eyes meeting hers. Survival is 90% patience, 10% timing. This won't be the dramatic finish you're expecting. I'm not expecting any drama, Elena countered. I was hoping for an end. It's close. You keep saying that, yet he slips through our fingers every time. We are always one step behind. Elena hugged her arms to her chest. What if he's just better than us? What if he can't be caught? Then we changed the rules. We stop chasing and make him come to us. By using me as bait? By creating the illusion that he's winning on our terms? Elena watched his face, trying to read the plan behind his stoic mask. You have an idea. The start of one, Adrian confirmed. Vittorio needs you to restore his perfect image, so we let him believe he's getting you back. You're asking me to walk right to him. I'm asking that he thinks you are. The meeting would be public, controlled. He believes he's won, but he's walking into a federal trap. The risk was immense, but she saw no other way out. And if it fails, she asked, I will get you out, same as last time. That might not be possible. It will be, Adrian said. His absolute certainty was unsettling, not comforting. It hinted at a man willing to pay any price to keep his word, which worried Elena deeply. Elena felt a disquieting shift inside her, a strange, protective impulse toward him. The attachment, perhaps a twisted symptom of her ordeal, was changing everything between them. I need time to think, she said. Of course. We have until... A buzz from his phone cut him short. He answered, his entire body going rigid. When? Where? How many casualties? A cold dread washed over Elena. Something was terribly wrong. Adrian hung up. Vittorio hit my South Side warehouse, burned it to the ground. 3 of my people were inside. There were no survivors. I see. This is an escalation. A move designed to make me angry, to make me careless. Adrian's voice was utterly flat, devoid of emotion. It's working. What are you going to do? What I should have done in the beginning. Finish this. He moved for the door. Stay with Sarah. Do not leave this apartment. Marcus and Rhee are on guard. I'll be back when it's over. Adrian. But he was already gone, with Nikolai and James at his side. Elena stood on the balcony alone, the weight of 3 more deaths settling upon her. When she went back inside, Marcus and Rhee were speaking in low, grim voices. What is his objective? Elena asked them. Termination, Rhee said flatly. By any means necessary. What does that mean exactly? Whatever it takes. The vague answer was more chilling than a direct one, as the true scope of what Adrian was willing to do began to sink in. Night fell. Elena and Sarah sat in taut silence, sleep impossible. The apartment felt like it was shrinking. Near midnight, her phone lit up with a blocked number. She answered on instinct. Hello, Elena. Vittorio's voice was calm, cultured, and completely soulless. It is time we spoke directly, just the 2 of us. No violence, no audience, a simple talk about how this concludes. Elena's hand tightened on the phone. How did you get this number? I always get what I want. You, of all people, should know that. The silence stretched. I am sending you an address. Come alone. If Adrian or his men appear, Sarah will die. If you fail to arrive within the hour, her family will be eliminated. Sarah is no longer with you. True, but her mother is, and her brother is just a sophomore at Northern Illinois. It would be a tragedy if they were harmed. A wave of sickness crashed over Elena. You're bluffing. Are you willing to bet their lives on that assumption? Vittorio's tone turned to ice. 1 hour, Elena. The coordinates are on their way. Do not fail me. The line clicked dead. A moment later, a text arrived with an address for a skyscraper downtown. Her mind raced. It was the exact trap Adrian had predicted. Vittoria's goal was to kill her, but refusing would doom Sarah's family, a guilt she could not live with. She glanced at Sarah's door where the girl slept, drugged by exhaustion. She watched her security detail, Marcus and Rhee, focused on surveillance feeds, completely unaware of the ultimatum she'd received. If she told them, they would stop her, and in doing so, sign a death warrant for Sarah's family. Her path was clear. Elena made her choice, pulling on her coat and feeling for the Glock Sophia had made her take, then headed for the exit. Where are you off to? Rhee's voice was sharp. The restroom, Elena lied. Can't sleep. She bypassed the hallway and slipped out of the apartment into the Chicago night, moving toward the tower and the final meeting. In that moment, something inside her changed. She would no longer be a pawn, her life a series of events dictated by others. She decided this conflict would end on her own terms, even if death was the outcome. The high-rise was a black monolith against the sky, a temple of power. Elena watched it from across the street, the Glock a cold, heavy presence at her back. The rideshare driver had seemed unnerved dropping her in the financial district so late. Her own phone had been vibrating non-stop since she left, frantic calls from Adrian, Marcus, and Ree, who now knew she was gone. Every call was an attempt to stop her from seeing this through. Elena powered the device down and dropped it into a street-side bin, cutting off their influence. A lone security guard manned the lobby, a young man with anxious eyes. He accepted the floor number without question, simply gesturing to the elevators. "The penthouse is on 42, he said. "Your access has been approved." She had expected as much. Vittorio's control was absolute. The elevator's climb was a slow descent into the abyss. In the mirrored walls, her reflection was a pale, hollow-eyed woman, pushed to her limit but unyielding. That reflection was not the person who stood at an altar 2 weeks ago. That woman's choices were made for her. This woman was walking into a kill zone by her own free will. There was a strange power in that, a clarity in facing the end. The doors opened onto a space of dark wood and dim lighting. In the center stood Vittorio, his hands in the pockets of a tailored suit. He looked the same as he had at the church, composed, controlled, lethal. But his eyes held a new, colder emptiness. "Elena," he said, his tone casual as if greeting an old friend. "I'm pleased you made it. I was not entirely certain you would. You threatened an innocent family. I had no other choice." "There is always another choice." Vittorio motioned to 2 chairs by the window. "Sit. Let us be civil." "I'd rather stand." "As you wish." He walked to the window, looking down at the city lights. "It is beautiful, no? All those tiny lives, ignorant of how the world truly works, of who is really in control." "Is that how you see yourself?" Elena asked. "Superior? As if your money and violence make you significant?" A small, humorless smile touched Vittorio's lips. "My power grants me freedom, a notion you could never comprehend. Your existence has been a series of cages built by your father, by fate, by your own frailties. When Adrian Vale shattered our wedding, you saw a savior, but all he did was trade your gilded cage for a different one." "He's nothing like you." "No, he is more dangerous. My wickedness is on display. Adrian hides behind a mask of honor. But we are cut from the same cloth, men who take what we want and destroy anything in our path." Victor faced her. "The only difference is that with me, you would have had it all. Safety. Comfort. Safety. And what has Adrian offered you? A life of running and hiding." "He offered me a choice," Elena said. "That's more than you ever did." "Choice?" Victor spat the word like poison. "Let me show you the price of your choices. Sarah brutalized because you ran. 3 of Adrian's men burned alive because you meddled in affairs beyond you. And now you stand here, your final choice leading you to your own death. How has this freedom served you?" His words struck with more force than she expected. He was right about the bloody toll of her actions. People had died, but it didn't make him right. "You hurt Sarah," Elena countered softly. "You killed those men. My choices didn't pull the trigger. You did. This is about you losing control. Someone said no, and your fragile ego couldn't bear it." Victor's face hardened into a mask of stone. "Watch your words, Elena. Your life is in my hands." "No, it isn't. I'm here because you're desperate." A sudden, sharp clarity cut through her fear. "The feds are on your heels. Your men are abandoning you. Your empire is crumbling. You thought that getting me back, proving you still owned me, would fix it all. But it's over, Victor. You just haven't accepted it yet. For a long moment, Victor just stared. Then a low chuckle rumbled in his chest, real and amused. You've grown a spine, he observed. I'll give you that. The girl I was to marry would never have spoken to me this way. The girl you were to marry doesn't exist anymore. You killed her when you tried to buy her. A pity. She will be missed. His hand slipped inside his coat. Elena's own hand drifted to the Glock on her hip, but he only produced a phone. Let me show you a little something. He turned the screen, a live feed showing Sarah's mother's home. 2 armed men stood watch. One phone call, Victor murmured, and my men go inside. Sarah's mother dies, her brother dies. Maybe I'll have them burn the whole house down. A terrible accident. Elena's fingers brushed the grip of her weapon. You won't do it. And why not? What's stopping me? You still need me. If they die, I have no reason to listen to you. And a woman with nothing left to lose is a dangerous thing. Victor considered her words. A fair point. So we'll make a deal. You come back to me, smiling for the cameras. We'll tell them Adrian took advantage. We get married. You play the part of my lovely wife, and Sarah's family gets to breathe. I'll even let Adrian live so long as he stays out of my way. And you expect me to trust you'll honor that deal? I expect you to realize it's the best one you're going to get. Victor slipped his phone away. The other option is I start killing everyone you love, slowly, until you beg me to take you. Then I'll kill them all anyway, just to prove a point. Elena's hand clenched the pistol. She could draw, shoot. Maybe she could take him down before his guards reacted. But that wouldn't save Sarah's family. It wouldn't call off the men at the house. I need proof they're safe first, Elena said. Call your men off. Let me see that Sarah's family is safe, and then we'll talk. A smile touched Victor's lips. Clever, untrusting. I like you so much more than that timid girl at the wedding. He pulled out his phone once more. But no, you don't make the demands here. You choose. Take my offer or I make the call. The elevator behind her dinged. Elena spun, her heart pounding, expecting guards. But it was Adrian, with Marcus and Nikolai at his back, all armed. Get away from her, Victor! Adrian's voice was deathly quiet. Victor's expression didn't flicker. I've been waiting for you. Did you think I'd let her walk into this alone? This was never a trap. Victor swept his hand across the room. This is an ending. One way or another, it all stops tonight. I agree, Adrian said, then looked to Elena. Are you hurt? No, she said. But he has men at Sarah's family's house. Had men. Marcus cut in. We pulled them out 10 minutes ago. Her mother and brother are safe. Relief flooded through Elena, but Victor just laughed. I should have known. Always so meticulous, Adrian. Admirable. Victor's hand went to his coat, but this time it came out with a pistol. But meticulous isn't invincible. 3 more figures stepped from the room's deep shadows. Men Elena hadn't seen. Their guns were trained on Adrian's men. Here's how this goes, Victor announced. Everyone puts their weapons down, very slowly, or we find out who's quicker. There are federal agents downstairs, Adrian stated flatly. 3 floors down, waiting for my signal. You fire that gun, they're coming up, and this ends for you. You're bluffing, Victor sneered. If you had feds, you'd have sent them, not come yourself. I'm not bluffing. Adrian's face was a mask. This was the plan. draw you out, and let the government clean up." For the first time, a shadow of doubt crossed Victor's features. "You lie." "Do I?" Adrian pulled out his phone with his other hand. A single press of a button would have ended it. But Adrian waited, giving Elena the chance to face her monster. Victor's eyes locked onto her, seeing an object, a prize. His threat sparked something primal in her, a response drilled into her muscles. Her training took over, moving faster than thought. The gunshot cracked, the bullet ripping into Victor's shoulder, spinning him around as his weapon clattered to the floor. In that instant, both security teams opened fire. The room exploded into a storm of noise and motion. The sound was deafening, each shot echoing like a cannon blast, and Elena instinctively recoiled. The reality of what she had done tried to surface, but the will to live pushed it back down. Marcus grabbed her, pulling her behind cover as the firefight raged. Through the chaos, she saw Victor on the ground and his men falling. The balance of power had violently and completely shifted. Adrian stood over Victor, the man who had tried to own Elena completely. A pained, crazed laugh escaped Victor's lips, the sound of a narcissist whose world was breaking, who believed himself untouchable. Then Adrian made the call. The wail of approaching sirens finally shattered Victor's delusion of power, a flicker of panic in his eyes. Adrian began listing the federal charges, each one dismantling the legal fortress Victor thought he had built. The case against him was airtight. Photos, witness statements, a 5-year trail of laundered money. Victor could only spit a useless insult. As federal agents swarmed the floor, Adrian's team handed him over. The entire time, Victor's hateful stare was locked on Elena. He uttered one last threat, but the words were hollow. He knew on some level that he had already lost. A federal officer, Special Agent Chen, gently approached to lead Elena away. Adrian immediately asked about her legal standing, his protective instinct still firing. Chen assured him she was a witness, a victim, his voice calm and reassuring. Her body trembled, the adrenaline finally leaving her system. When they confirmed Sarah's family was truly safe, a wave of relief so powerful washed over Elena that it stole her voice. As they led him away, Victor threw one last poisoned barb at Elena, trying to paint her rescue as just another cage. It was a classic abuser's tactic meant to deny her freedom. But Elena's soft reply, "I'm not anyone's," was a quiet declaration of her own victory. The rest of the night was a long debriefing, a painful recounting of her ordeal. The sun was rising when Agent Chen finally took her to a safe place. A new day had begun. Model. Inside, Elena found Sarah, whose visible distress intensified at the sight of the blood spatter on Elena's clothes. Hearing the words that the man was caught caused a dam of emotion to break inside Sarah. Elena pulled her into an embrace, a moment of shared release as they both began to process the trauma. Once Sarah had steadied, Elena went to find Adrian, needing to make sense of the day's events with him. She let him know she was aware he'd been watching, and he did not deny it. When she offered her thanks, he deflected, giving her the credit for the critical move. She spoke of the violent act with a strange detachment, remarking on the absence of emotion she expected, describing it as a clinical task, a mind protecting itself from the horror. Her struggle to name her feelings was a clear sign of post-traumatic shock. Then, his final, poisonous words echoed in her memory. She repeated Victor's claim that she had only traded one keeper for another. After a long, heavy silence, Adrian asked what she truly believed. Elena confessed she initially thought his motives were pure revenge, but that something had shifted. She picked apart their connection, questioning if it was gratitude, a shared trauma, or something genuine, a textbook case of a trauma bond. Her desire to leave was a clear attempt to forge a life of her own. "I am choosing for myself now," she said, her voice firm. "A choice I should have made long before others made it for me. I need to know who I am when I am not a fugitive or a victim." Her eyes met his, unwavering. "Only then can we figure out what this is, without the weight of obligation or force confusing it." He studied her for a long moment, his face a mask. Then, with a slow nod, Adrian agreed. Okay, that single word defied her expectations of a fight or a negotiation. He was letting her go, releasing her from any debt she might have felt, his voice tight with unspoken emotion. "I don't own you," he said again. He offered a future possibility, contingent on her finding herself first. "We'll see if what we have is real, or just the product of adrenaline and close quarters." Elena felt the terms of the deal settle over her. Terrifying, she thought, but also freedom. She accepted the fear that came with true autonomy. "It's messy, and not the fantasy I was promised," she remarked, "but it's mine." 3 weeks later, her healing was on display in a gallery in a new city. An exhibit of photographs chronicled a cross-country drive she took to reclaim her own point of view. She spoke with Sarah daily, who was now also in therapy. For both women, the path to recovery was becoming clearer. Sarah's recovery was steady. Elena erected a firm boundary, blocking her father's number and his attempts to get through. A final necessary cut. The surprising success of her art granted her financial freedom, the key to her new autonomy. Her life was her own creation, filled with a mixture of pride, shock, and a low hum of anxiety that was a natural part of her healing. It was petrifying. This new state was sometimes lonely, but it was also the most intensely alive she had ever been. A text message appeared from Adrienne. It was gentle and supportive, respecting the space she had demanded. The conversation that followed was light, building a connection free from the constant pressure of crisis. She typed, "I miss you." The confession was impulsive, surprising even herself, and felt like a genuine connection, not the trauma bond she had feared. For 3 weeks, she had actively suppressed thoughts of Adrian and their potential connection. But distance only made the feeling stronger. His text was a calm anchor, a promise of patience that acknowledged the fire they had both walked through. Memories flooded her as proof. The quiet church, the inferno at the mansion, the warehouse, a final sunrise together. He was the man who had offered her the mirage of a choice when she had none. The conflict remained. Could a bond forged in chaos survive in peace? Still, she knew they would have to meet again, a choice she had to make to control her own narrative. A narrative that might still include the dangerous man who had become her sanctuary. A classic paradox. But first, she had to complete the journey of becoming herself. Elena turned from the screen to her photos, tangible proof of her journey. Outside, rain began to fall, washing the city clean. In that gallery, Elena Cross was finally at the center of her own story, a life that was hers alone. The ending was not perfect, but it was her own, and that was all that mattered.
From a distance, Elena's story appears to be a familiar tale of escape. A woman flees a violent man and survives, but beneath the action lies something more unsettling. This is a story about the architecture of control and how violence often disguises itself as order, family, duty, or even love. Victor does not merely want Elena's body, he wants authorship over her identity. He wants her choices erased so thoroughly that obedience begins to feel natural. Her father participates in this violence too, not with a gun, but with surrender. He offers his daughter to power because he lacks the courage to confront the consequences of his own failure. In that sense, Elena is not trapped by one monster. She is trapped by a system of male betrayal, weakness, ego, and entitlement that keeps reproducing itself. That is why the deepest life lesson here is not simply be brave. It is this: a person must learn to recognize control even when it wears the language of protection. Victor promises security, Adrienne offers safety, but Elena's true transformation begins only when she starts interrogating both. She realizes that survival without agency is only another kind of captivity. This is what makes the story resonate. It is not revenge that completes her arc. It is discernment. She learns to ask the most dangerous question in any unequal relationship: who benefits if I surrender my will? Once she asks that, the whole illusion collapses. The cycle of violence depends on silence, dependency, and inherited fear. Elena breaks it not by becoming more ruthless than the men around her, but by refusing to let any of them define her future. Her final act is not choosing between two powerful men, it is choosing herself. And that is why her freedom feels earned rather than gifted.